Good morning to all the participants and all the audience who have joined us. We are just waiting for our chair and co-chair to join the session. Kindly bear with us.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, good morning to everyone. Kusum Sati.
Yes, ma'am.
Someone's mic is on. Kindly mute yourself.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes.
Hello, good morning, Atika ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning.
How are
How are you,
you?
Swati? I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too, ma'am. We are just waiting for our chair to join us.
Sure, sure. She'll soon join.
Yes.
Good morning, ma'am. Please unmute, ma'am.
Good morning, Ramika ma'am.
Morning, everyone. Hello, Dr. Charu. I will just leave the other meeting.
Yes, Kutum, is there anything to ask?
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I don't know, some glitch. And did you change the link, Priyanka? Because I used the one that you sent the other day with the brochure and
Ma'am, it's the same link, I believe.
I don't know, but blame it on technology. Hi, everyone. Atika, lovely to see you. And of
Same here,
course,
same here.
Dr. Charu, Dr. Preeti, and others, everyone. Thank you for having us over. I'm sure the conference is going great guns.
Good morning,
Absolutely,
ma'am.
ma'am. Thank you so much.
Right. Hello, morning.
Thank you, Ramika ma'am, for joining us. Thank you,
Sure.
Atika ma'am.
My pleasure.
Pleasure, likewise. So me and Atika were chatting that we are going to use this forum to also say hi to each other because it's been a while. And let me also share, I was a little disappointed. I said, why is Kanodia doing it virtually? Call us, let's just go offline, man.
Ma'am, actually, we kept it precautionary because of this
I
pandemic
know,
duty, and
of course,
government betrayed us just 5 days before, and
right,
everything
right.
was completely unlocked.
Right. No, I understand it is, pretty prudential of you in terms of not really going all out, but at the same time, one misses that kind of, the on-ground feel of conferencing. Yeah.
We'll
So,
soon meet in person, ma'am. Looking
sure.
forward for a
Ab-
physical get together.
absolutely. And Atika, I hope you've been well, keeping busy at the
Absolutely.
NAVDA campus.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Busy settling in the new place
I
and
know. Yes. So, do we have the presenters, Priyanka?
Yeah.
Are they?
Over to Swati. Swati ma'am is moderating.
Apology for the technical glitch. On behalf of Department of English, Kanodia PG Mahila Mahavidyalaya, I, Swati Dhanwani, extend a warm welcome to day 2 of the 2-day international seminar, Post-Truth, Actual versus Alternate Reality, organized jointly by Department of English and English Language Teachers Association of India, Rajasthan chapter. Thank you all for joining. I welcome you all to Technical Session 3, Misconceptions of Emotional Reality in Literature. So for today's session, we have as chair Dr. Ramika Shinki Madam. Madam is Associate Professor and Head, Department of English at IIS University, Jaipur. Dr. Singhi's teaching career spans nearly 2 decades and her areas of interest include Indian writing in English, especially women's poetry, diaspora and young adult fiction, partition city narratives, and writings from the Middle East. She has also published in several research journals of repute and has presented papers at national and international conferences. We welcome you, ma'am. We also have with us as co-chair for the session Dr. Atika Kelsi, Madam from Department of English, St. Xavier's College, Jaipur. Ma'am has a teaching career of 16 years and has worked with various prestigious universities. Her areas of expertise is post-colonial literature, women's writing, translation studies, pop culture, film studies, and children's literature. Ma'am has also organized many national and international conferences and workshops, chaired sessions, delivered keynote addresses, and has also presented papers in all these events. Ma'am has recently finished translating a book, God's Mission to the Nations. We welcome you, ma'am. We have with us two paper presenters in this session. I would like to call the first paper presenter, ma'am, Miss Akansha Kaushik. Are you ready, ma'am?
Ma'am, Mrs.
I'm so sorry, Mrs. Akansha Kaushik. Ma'am, are you ready?
Yes,
Sorry, before Akansha begins, do you want to also specify? I don't know why is there an echo, but Charu, can you hear me?
Ma'am, I
yes,
can hear you.
Yeah, so do you want to spell out the rules of the game in terms of how much time they have, and would you want us to take questions right after or together, or maybe all of that? So if you
Ma'am,
could
it's
just
completely up to your wish. If you wish, you can take the questions right after the paper presenter.
okay, because there are only two, I believe, unless the others have come in as well. There are only
Yes,
two.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. There are only two paper presenters,
Okay, so how
so
much
we
time
have
do you
ample.
want?
Ma'am, we have ample of time
Okay,
to conduct the session.
but even then, peg it at 20 minutes, 30 minutes,
Yes, ma'am. I
15
think
minutes,
20 minutes we can give
20.
to one paper presenter.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Also, ma'am, I would like to specify the sub-themes of this session. So, the sub-themes are ideologies and literature, work of literature in the age of post-truth, autobiographies, biographies, and historiographies, post-truth through the prism of philosophy, and Foucault and truth regime of truth and Foucault. That's all. Thank you. Over to your Kansha, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. I'm Akanksha Kaushik from Rasan School of Art. The title of my paper,
Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. Would you like to turn on your camera because you're not visible?
okay. Yes, I'm Akanksha Kaushik from Rasan School of Art. The title of my paper is Psychosocial Study of Disability in Post-Truth Social Structure. Shall I begin my paper, ma'am? People with differences can lead a normal life if they are given advanced therapies, medical interventions, and training on time. They are the potential part of society, but society takes them as incapable and inactive part of society. People label them with tags like weak, incapable, pagal, and manbuddhi, which are based on their misconceptions. These misconceptions are the result of myths based on religions and traditions, fake news circulating through social media and other unreliable medium. In this context, Simonton states that, I quote, we prod people to examine how disability as a category was created to serve certain ends and how the category has been institutionalized in social practices and intellectual conventions. I unquote. This paper is an effort to bring awareness among the readers to know about the people with differences. For this purpose, I have taken up Kamla Markande's Nectar in a Seed. Disability representation in Indian novels conforms to age old notions of disability, which are based on myths and stereotypes. Here, ma'am, I want to convey that myths and stereotypes prevalent in society are the post-truth because they have been claimed by people so that the myths and stereotypes based on religions and customs and traditions have become post-truths, and society is now the society has started to follow or conform to the norms set by the dominating part of society. And I have taken up the reference of post truth, or I have connected the post truth realities with disability. And for this purpose, I'm going to discuss two characters of Kamla Markande, which are physically different from the society norms. Disability representation in Indian novels conforms to age old notions of disability, which are based on myths and stereotypes. The novel portrays Sakrabani, a child suffering from skin disease, albino, because of which the whole family feels stigmatized. And this stigma is all because of the norms which have been set by the society and now which have become the post truth. Post truth claims. And Puli, the second character is Puli, who is afflicted with leprosy, who tries his best to be self reliant but ultimately was forced to beg for his livelihood against his wish. The aim of this paper is to study the social attitude in rural India towards disability with a special reference to post-truth factors affecting social structure where acquisition of knowledge is based upon the dominance of emotions, which is one of the characteristics of post-truth. Social evils dominate the rural areas in India, whereas these evils are the part of social life of people. Tyrannical customs and traditions of rural areas do not change with time and circumstances. Markandeya is talking about the time when it was written and published, but these social evils are still prevalent in rural areas of India. And somewhere where people are not educated, these evils still dominate the society. Markandeya has presented her two characters with physical disability, Sakrabani and Puli. Sakrabani is an albino child and Puli has no fingers but only stumps. The disease has shortened nails and fingers. Markandeya states that Puli was manifestly more capable of caring for it than we were. Here, Markandeya tries to present her character who has deformed or rotten fingers or specially abled or different from the set norms of society with very she's trying to sensitize and positively present her character fully because she has mentioned that capable enough to he's more capable of caring for it than we were. According to Bilgin, a post-truth narrative is a fiction that constitutes its own lived reality. It depends upon the society to an extent that they can bring a revolutionary change in society or not. People do not accept the child who is different from the norms set by the society. Markandeya conveys social attitude in the guise of Kali, one of the garrulous neighbors of Rukmani, when she remarks on seeing Sakravani, I quote, not a bit normal. Who never heard of pink eyes? Who ever heard of pink eyes in a human child? Here, Sakravani has been pointed out as a not normal child because society and certain myths and certain stereotypes have decided the normality of a person. If a person or a child does not have a color of eyes which has been set by the society as normal, so that means he's not normal. Her remark shows the unacceptable attitude on the part of social members. who even do not want to consider differently abled as a normal human beings, even not even a human being. This kind of attitude creates stress and struggle for people with differences and their caregivers as well. This post social attitude has brought preceding developments in society and the lives of specially abled people as well. Fish states that, I quote, the attitude towards information that characterizes post truth politics is in direct conflict with democratic decision making. I unquote. At the same time, in this context, Markanday introduces characters with positive attitude. Actually, she has tried her best to present the both parts of society, a negative approach of people as well as the positive attitude of people, where some of the part of society try to support the people with differences. She introduces characters with positive attitude, either it might be their indifference or sense of indifference attitude towards differences or a sense of responsibility. Her character Selvam, Rukmani's fifth son, counter reacts when he listens to the remark of Kali. He says, a pink eyed child is no worse than a brown eyed one. Here he directly remarks or directly points out the part of society who often points out at the people with differences and try to differentiate or marginalize this potential part of society. Social evils result in the dislocation of families and have an adverse effect on the rural life and nature. Lack of education and poverty affect the post truth claims to a great extent. The idea of post truth has become important in today's social structure. According to Ball, this is human tendency to select information in accordance with pre-existing worldviews, which is also one of the characteristics of post-truth claims, in which where society or the part of people, we, the responsible part of people, we try to uh, select information according to our wish or our emotional or intellectual status, and which are sometimes based on the prevalent myths or either our acceptability actually, what we think or what we perceive to the society. In a society where there is no accessible source of true information like villages and people who do not get in touch with literature and media related to disability, religion based myths and stereotypes have the monopoly of knowledge. People are empowered to choose information on their own with which they prefer to live. In such an environment, according to Suter, I quote, truth is simply a matter of assertion, I unquote. In Indian societies, especially in rural areas, people assert these truths that the whole community is in such a way that the whole community starts to believe in it. Davis states that post-truth claims are a form of displaying particular relation to target audiences. So this was my paper. I don't know. I know I'm not able to justify with the topic, but still I just tried. Like it was, I really had short time. That's why. Thank you, ma'am.
I think you had all the time. The organizers said you could take as much time. So I
But
wonder
ma'am,
why you
I
say
did not
that.
have time preparing a paper. No, that's why it was just.
Preparing a paper. Oh, okay. So I don't know when the call for papers was sent out, but anyway, Atika, what do you think? Should we also listen to the second one and then maybe?
Yes, yes.
All right, sure. Okay, thank you, Akanksha. I think we can now go over to Garima.
Thank you, Kansha ma'am. We have the next paper presenter, Ms. Garima Swami.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. Um,
The topic for my presentation is Unveiling Extremism, Exploring Ideology and Religious Oppression in Marjan Satrapi's Persepolis. In political, literary, and cultural theory, the term ideology owes much to the writings of Karl Marx. In the book, The German Ideology, co written with Friedrich Engels, Marx asserts that ideology corresponds to the dominant ideas held by any particular society. These ideas are in evidence in every aspect of society's culture and social organization, in its laws, politics, religion, art, and so on. They are always also the ideas of the ruling class and serve to legitimize its wealth and power. Friedrich Engels claims that an ideology is the belief, values, and the way of thinking and feeling through which human beings perceive and by recourse to which they explain what they take to be reality. An ideology is, in complex ways, the product of the position and interest of a particular class. There's a very thin line between following an ideology and being an extremist. Extremism is when an organized group of people hold extreme political and religious beliefs. Extremists have no tolerance for people disagreeing with their beliefs. Here I quote Benazir Bhutto's, I quote, extremism can flourish only in an environment where basic governmental social responsibility for the welfare of the people is neglected. Political dictatorship and social hopelessness create the desperation that fuels religious extremism. The novel that I've taken up is a graphic novel, Persepolis. It is written by Marjan Satrapi and it depicts the author's childhood through her adult years during the Islamic Revolution of 1979. Marjan Satrapi is an Iranian born French graphic novelist, and the novel Persepolis is actually her autobiography. She uses dialogue when absolutely necessary, as well as there is a use of pictures to illustrate to the Western audience the whole setup of the Islamic environment, and the even also and she also talks about the time of the Shah regime. Her illustrations are black and white, depicting the strict and straightforward nature of Iran as a country. The title Persepolis is a Greek term which means city of Persians. This city is located in the southwest of the present day Iran. Persepolis has been the sign of Iranian culture and heritage for thousands of years. Although it is in ruins today, Persepolis remains a city central to the Persian identity. It recalls a time when Iran was a powerful empire and it was pre-Islamic. In the very introduction of the book, Marjan states that, I quote, "This is why writing Persepolis was so important to me. I believe that an entire nation should not be judged by the wrongdoings of a few extremists. I also don't want those Iranians who lost their lives in prison defending freedom, who died in war against Iraq, who suffered under various repressive regimes, or who were forced to leave their families and flee their homeland to be forgotten." I unquote. In the novel, extremist ideologies can be traced through various aspects. There is use of veil. There's also a very biased system of education. So I'm going to highlight all those points. In the book, Marjan's uncle once quoted that in a country where half the population is illiterate, you cannot unite the people around Karl Marx. The only thing that can really unite them is a religious ethic. The Islamic regime mobilized religious fundamentalism to legitimize closing schools and purging Western culture and thought. Throughout history, concepts like these have fueled ethnic violence, civil war, and countless revolutions. Women in the Middle East are marginalized through policies like being forced to wear veil, not being allowed to obtain a decent education, and being manipulated into performing acts of terror. When Satrapi was once caught in her adolescence by the guardians of the revolution, she explains that the job of fundamentalist women branch was to arrest women who were improperly veiled, like herself. She states, I quote, "I really don't know what to think about the veil. Deep down, I was very religious, but as a family, we were very modern. All this was done because Islamic extremists wanted to use women as vessels for whichever cause or philosophy they thought was convenient during that period of time. The veil that is forced upon them is used to constantly remind women that they are not free or equal and that they need to be protected and are dependent on man as well as the government. Hence, ultimately giving the male dominant society more power. In another instance, Marjan's mother recounts a traumatic event in which two fundamentalist men said, I quote, that women like her should be pushed up against the wall and raped and then thrown in the garbage. I unquote. This awful experience was prompted by Marjan's mother's not wearing the veil out in public, further implicating the misguided mindsets and the repressive nature of the policies concerning the mandatory veil. Additionally, the education given was extremely biased and exceedingly disparaged. During Shah's regime, Marjan states to her parents that, I quote, I love the king, he was chosen by God, I unquote. Later, she explains that she believes this only because it was written on the first page of her school book. And ironically, later, after the Islamic Revolution, the very pages the children were asked to tear out those pages and all the photos of Shah from their books. This shows how the citizens were falling prey to the same manipulation, ending up becoming pawns of the misguiding government. People want to believe in what is right. However, society at times may dictate the opposite of righteousness simply because the injustice is deeply rooted within society itself. Other aspects that throw light on the extremist behavior can also be seen in the book. For example, photography was prohibited during the protests and rallies to control the narrative and suppress the dissents. Marjan's uncle was sent to jail because he was caught taking pictures during the rally. Marjan also talks about how the protesters were brutally punished for raising voices against the Islamic government. There were many gruesome acts, like the act of electrocuting subjects on electric chairs. There was also a scene where cigarettes were put out on backs and thighs of the protesters. And in one case, a person was burned with iron and later he succumbed to his injuries. There was also revision of curriculum to imbibe the conservative ideas. I quote, the education system and what is written in school books, all the levels, should be revised to ensure that our children are not led astray from the true path of Islam. That's why we are closing all the universities for a while. Better to have no students at all than to educate future imperialists. I unquote. Even the underprivileged boys were recruited in the army and were brainwashed with the false promises of afterlife. I quote, they come from the poor areas, you can tell. First, they convince them that the afterlife is even better than Disneyland. Then they put them in a trance with all their songs and just toss them into battles. Absolute carnage. Anything that was indicative of Western influence, be it video cassettes, deck of cards, chess, alcohol, and or any a thing as petty as singers' posters, were considered obscene and were prohibited. Uh, with this, I'd like to conclude my paper, and all I found out through this was that the Iranian Islamic Revolution didn't just overthrow the monarchy, but it also led to severe consequences for the citizens. Satrapi has clearly shown how dangerous and cult-like organized religion can be. Revolution or conflict situation result in reinforcement of backward tendencies among the people, which can be a tool in the hands of the ruling class. The Islamic Republic used religion as the medium to spread its tentacles around Iran. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Garima, to both the presenters, in fact. Uh, should we, how do we take it, Atika? Should we first comment on the papers or throw it open to the audience, because I do see a fair number of people who are attending
Yes.
it. So I
Yes.
think, yeah, so maybe let's hear them out first, because the
Yes.
whole idea is to probably,
And then we can wrap it up.
exactly, because let's not listen to our own opinion and have more people come in, because there are research scholars. So Garima is, of course, a research scholar at the University of Rajasthan in the Department of English, I believe. What about you, Akanksha? Your credentials weren't mentioned here, so one was wondering. Are you a research scholar too, or a postgrad student, or Akanksha? Akanksha Kaushik? Yes. Or are you a faculty member?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, right now I'm working at Rasa School of Art
I
and
see.
I'm pursuing my PhD in
Oh,
intellectual disability. That's why
okay.
I taken
All
my
right, sure. And which university are you with? Or are you with Kanodia pursuing your PhD?
I'm Rasa University. I'm
Okay, all right, okay, okay. Great. So
but
I think,
I'm working
sorry,
at Rasa School of Art, ma'am.
I got that. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Great. So I think the two papers are now open. They're pretty diverse. So we only have two papers, but I'm sure there is enough that we can talk about, because one is looking at disability in this whole post-truth scenario, and the whole reality of truth. It sounds pretty bizarre when I hear myself talking about the reality of truth, because we don't even know what truth is anymore, and how real is the real. You see, do we go for actual or real? And I think the conference comes at a very opportune time when we are revisiting these categories and these very, very watertight compartments. So let's throw it open. I think the protocol would be to either raise your hand or start typing in the chat box, or maybe just turn on your camera, unmute, and go for it. So questions, comments to the presenters? Because there are some 30 odd in the audience, which is a good number for a. Is this a parallel session, Dr. Charma?
Ma'am, this is not a parallel session.
I
This is
see.
the only
Okay.
session we are running at this time.
Great, great. That's lovely. I mean, however much, the parallel session gives you that kind of, opportunity to have more presentations. I feel sometimes, it spreads thin, and we're not able to do justice. So I think this is a fairly good number. So anyone, whoever would like to maybe break the ice, begin.
If no one's ready, then maybe, given the contemporary political context, Rimika, especially the second paper talking
Yes.
about. So I would like the audience to connect the two and maybe give their observations, because we are talking about post-truth here, and we are talking of a very charged political context, and we are living in a
Absolutely.
similar political
Yeah,
context.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a whole lot of geopolitics that comes in, and Garima, I think you should, investigate that as well. I'm assuming that this is also part of your doctoral interest, because sometimes, scholars are writing, out of their thesis. So do look at, the ramifications of location, how it impacts identity. It's interesting. One of my research scholars also is looking at satrapi and two more, writers from the Middle and Far East, and who don't live there anymore. But then they're not really writing fondly about the lost homeland. But yeah, these are narratives of, a different sort of home that they remember, and they know they can never return to that sort of home. And where is home, and the role of extremism, and how you very, very appropriately have looked at. Ideology and oppression. I mean, but then there is also a narrative that is beyond all of this. You see, there is that whole spirit of, reconciliation with the idea of home and so on. So I was also interested. I mean, since there are no questions from the audience, and Atika did say that we could maybe start talking a little bit. I was wondering, Garima, did you also look at the form of the graphic novel in terms of how graphically Satrapi goes about, showing that sort of negotiation that writers and people from one country who have left that, and or who have been compelled to leave that and settle elsewhere. So do you think she could have just written the novel? Why the graphic novel? How does that help her perform per se?
Was it
Ma'am,
a
according to me,
Satrapi has chosen the illustrations, and even in the illustrations, they are just black and white. There's no use of color. And even when she's showing the protesters, she's showing them in all black. And the other party, that is the Communist Party, they are wearing they are presented in the white. So there's that clear demarcation that she has done. And also, when I was reading about Marjan Satrapi, I came across that she said uh, what came before writing was drawings. So when you draw something, you're able to express yourself much better than writing it down. And people have a misconception about Iran that whole of the Iran is following that extremist ideology, but she wanted to tell the audience that it's not like that. There are a few people who are following that. You can't judge the whole country. And I think for that matter, she has used those illustrations so that the Western audience would be able to get a better glimpse of Iran.
Also, I wish, Garima, you would have used a PPT, to
Yes,
present your
yes.
paper, and then picked up a few very important illustrations that she,
Yes,
Hmm.
yes.
that you think are important for the narrative, and then talked about it and then elaborated it. Uh,
I'll do it next.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And Akansha,
Yes, ma'am.
um, let's talk about your paper as well. I wish you had gone in a little more detail. Uh, I think Rimika agrees. I think the paper could have been a little more elaborate because you're talking about disability, and so you could have brought in a lot of culture, perceptions, truths, and then post truths, and you could have also brought in a lot of psychology. You know, we talk of disability, and you could have probably even Freudian and post-Freudian. You could have elaborated, on truth and post-truth, connected that ways, and then talked about your paper.
Okay, ma'am. I'll try to do that. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, Akanksha, in fact, I do agree with what Atika has just observed with regard to your paper. In fact, I was wondering, what exactly do you mean by these post-truth social structures? You do mention that, in your title, psychosocial study of disability in a post-truth social structure. So could you just clarify that? Because I don't think you dwelt on it much during your
Yes,
paper reading.
actually, I'm sorry, I really didn't justify with the paper, but actually, I just wanted to discuss the social structure, especially social attitude of people, which is framed according to their own emotions and intellect, which is based on the existing social system. For example, in villages, if if villagers see any albino child, then they react according to their own knowledge. They don't aware of the fact that the child is also a normal person and he can also lead a normal life, or he's also a potential part of society. So this is the thing which I tried to connect with the uh, post-truth factors of society.
Okay,
That is
so
what I was struggling with. Sorry, Rimika,
yeah, no, please go ahead.
but I was struggling with how have you connected it with post-truth, That doesn't come across very clearly in your paper, in your talk. Am I making sense? I mean, did you feel the same?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I really regret the fact that I did not include the psychological theories of, Freudian theories or and all.
Yes,
So,
yes. Not just Freud. I just named him because when we talk of post-truth, we also sometimes,
psychological theories also
So,
I could add to this paper. Actually, sorry, ma'am, I was in a hurry because
no,
I
it's
really
all
have.
right. It's all right. It's okay.
Yeah. No, I think, what Atika and I are just trying to do is to help you problematize, the conference theme a bit, and then, of course, your own choice of text, author, and then the writing of the paper. I think what you probably did was to confuse post-truth with, the conventional way of received knowledge treatment vis-a-vis, how tradition sort of inscribes it onto our behavior, and then looking at other cultural markers. So I think you were looking at, what has traditionally / conventionally been the accepted norm, and then how we need to go beyond that sort of, beyond that, received knowledge and challenge it, and perhaps understand it better and be more inclusive. So I think your paper was maybe towards that more. But if you go back to the larger theme of the conference, we're looking at post-truth. We're looking at various kinds of truth. In fact, we're looking at a post-truth scenario, you see. It's no longer post-truth. You see, you are even revisiting the idea of post-truth. So there is, I guess, I love the way, Adhika, if you noticed, the conference theme, the thematic note ends with tentative truth. I loved it because it's so tentative. Everything is so tentative.
Absolutely,
Isn't
absolutely.
it? Yeah. So even the received notions of disability. So I wish you had gone there and contested that more.
Yes,
And why Markandeya? I mean, who's talking about early 20th century now? There's so much in the now writing. You see, so as a research scholar, I think come to the
closer to our
yeah,
times.
absolutely. You shouldn't even think about texts and authors, 5 years from
But
today.
I'm talking about the contemporary writers in my thesis. That's why I just did not want to discuss those writers again.
But
That's why
why not?
I
Sure, I get it. In fact, fantastic that you're not sticking to your, PhD area, because then you get so straight-jacketed and you're not, thinking of anything else. That's wonderful. But, avoid the done to death, writers and themes, because, there's so much available that there is no scope for that kind of new scholarship to emerge. Because you will always be pitted against, what has been said about Markandeya, which you are not repeating. You know what I'm saying? And
Absolutely.
the moment you pick up a new author,
okay.
Everything you say becomes,
you have no competition,
yes,
and you can be so original because nobody will say, "Hey, wait a minute, you sound like a 1974 paper that I
yes,
read on Markandeya."
right.
So, keep away from your Shashi Deshpandes and Anita Desais and Markandeyas. I mean, all respect to them; they are the pioneers. But I wish you had picked up a, novel, novella, even poems for that matter, any kind of writing, maybe from the 2018, 19, 19, 20, 21, perhaps. You see, there's so many writers who are looking at disability from, so many standpoints. So make sure, when you're writing a research paper for a conference like this, push yourself to stay with the recent. And then
And
I
the
guess,
conference was very timely. I must congratulate
exactly,
the
I know,
organizers.
very topical, really. I mean, there's so much that you can say.
Yes, yes.
And
And there's no dearth of material. There are series on web that talk about disability, that showcase
yes,
disability.
absolutely.
So there's so much out there that you can, whatever interests you, bring it out and research upon it and make it your voice, give it your voice rather.
Okay,
You can
ma'am.
think of that.
Right.
Thank you for the suggestions, ma'am. I'll certainly follow your suggestions, ma'am. I'll
Yeah,
keep
it's a
in mind.
great area. Disability is a great area. There's a lot of
What
visibility, of disability in literature today and the arts. It's just that you shift your focus, make it a more critically based inquiry, more theoretical as well. I mean, not too much, but again, and concentrate on and spend more time with the recent crop of writers, because that's when you'll understand, how a Markandeya is now being sort of looked differently from writers in the now. You see,
yes.
because what you're doing is you're looking at a Markandeya writing in 2022. It's not fair on Markandeya. It's not
And
fair.
honestly, you've not been able to break the,
Yeah.
the perspective of people when we read Nectar in a Sieve. So there was nothing of the post truth. I was looking at it, to put it very frankly, there was nothing of the post truth in the paper, and you should have picked up another author. Sometimes you have ideas, but it's sometimes the wrong choice of an author that you make, and then you struggle to connect the two. But otherwise, it was a good effort, nonetheless.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Right, thank you. I cannot see any questions still, either in the chat box or from the audience. So I'll just go back to Garima once again. Garima, I found this topic, sorry, this idea in your abstract quite fascinating. When you talk about how the inscription on the body of the individual and nation can be read in satrapis. So, could you talk a little bit about that? Because this is a fantastic area of inquiry, and being a woman writer, and then her characters, clad in black, and the whole black and white binary you just talked about. So, how are you looking at body as nation? How are you looking at, the legitimization of positions of power, and of course against the backdrop of extremist politics. So a little bit on that.
Ma'am, actually, in my paper, I have taken the first half in the sum up, but when we go through the book, there's also the second part of the book when she is coming of age and she gets to another city, and then there when she's meeting new people, that extremist environment she was in, that leaves us some sort of influence on her character. So when she meets new people and they're talking openly about sexuality and all, she feels a bit taken aback, like how are you openly talking about it, because she was not allowed to wear jeans, she was not allowed to keep her hair open, or for the fact she had to wear a veil all the time. So all of this somewhere left a very huge impact on her as an individual. And even there are instances where martyrdom has been taken up, and we are shown how her neighbor, who died of an heart attack or maybe cancer, and the people around them, they say that he died because he was fighting for the country, which never happened. So all of these are taken up together, and I can say these little things which they were doing, like her mother once says that if anybody asks you if you pray or not, just say that I pray 5 times a day, no matter if you do it or not, just say. So all of these little things have left somewhere some sort of impact on every single individual who were living in Iran at the time of Islamic revolution.
Right, of course. And one final query, and then of course, if Atika has anything to come back to you with, how do you see your paper tying in with the theme of the conference again? I mean, how is Satrapi envisioning, a post-truth society, or is she already looking at a post-truth? Because she has moved away; she's no longer, in Iran. She lives elsewhere. So, that shift, and then is she negotiating from that location, or how does she envision, because you are talking about oppression ideology, and then the whole idea of anti extremism, but then where do you fit all this in again, like I said, against the larger, theme of the conference? Yeah.
Ma'am, I think that post truth is about like not just about lies, but there's a very thin line between truth and lies that we have to see. And in the book, like I said before, Iran has been given a status of a country that is not worthy of you visiting there, or it follows some sort of very extreme ideologies, and women are not treated properly. And all these are a mindset that we have created about Iran, and she's trying to break that ice. She's trying to tell us that that's not Iran, that's not how my country is. There are still it still has its culture of calligraphy, be it the Persian artifacts and everything. It's still alive. You can't judge the whole country based on some extremists who have come there and who have forced their opinions upon us. So I have taken that as a post-truth environment, and I came up with this paper.
Okay, so you mean the writerly truth sort of prevails. However, work in progress it is, because nobody's, truth is absolute, it's so relative. And like I said, the conference theme note 2 also talks about it being so tentative. Okay, great. So I think you're closer to at least that idea of, a society where all of those definitions are being contested and rewritten and revisited. And the writers, I guess, do their bit in examining them as well. Thank you. Atika, any questions?
Yes, I also was looking at the fact that I don't know, maybe you do it in your entire paper. Do you also talk about the politics of veil? Because it's you mentioned that veil is um, an instrument of oppression that was used. So if you could talk about that, and also of course, Bhumika has already touched upon it, which is the geopolitics, you know, of identity. And I also, do you think that she's contesting post-truth and then arriving at a certain other truth, or she's actually arriving at post-truth?
I think I still need to work a lot on this in order to arrive at that conclusion, because I have just studied a bit about the politics of Iran and the Shah regime and the Islamic Revolution, but still there's a lot that I need to cover to come to that conclusion and to see if it's a post truth era or a post truth time she's speaking of.
Yes, absolutely. So I thought maybe when you work on your paper a little bit, you can look at these
Yeah.
aspects as well.
And Garima, don't feel compelled to come to a conclusion. You see,
Yes.
the whole idea of being a research scholar is that one can never be too sure. And in fact, we're all scholars, right? At the end of the day, every teacher is a scholar and every teacher is also a student. So I guess, what we can do is only look at alternate ways. And, like again, your conference note suggests, I think the couple of words that they use: actual, alternate, tentative, non, even non-truth, perhaps is a state or stage to be experienced. So yeah, I think let's not be in a hurry to reach somewhere. As long as the journey opens you up to so many areas of inquiry and experience and allows you to look at the flip side. Because if you talk about the Iranian Revolution, I mean, there are hardliners who were convinced back in the day that they were doing the right thing. You see the Shah of Imam and so on and so forth. So, whose truth is it anyway? It's one of those questions. Great. So, do we have any more time, Dr. Charu? In fact, I think I'm addressing you as Charu, but probably you are just logged in using her name.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I'm Swati Dhanwani.
Swati, of course. I just realized that, she's not looking like Charu anymore, but maybe it's my old age. So I just kept quiet all this while.
So, ma'am, actually, we have wrapped up the session just on time.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. Unless, of course, there's somebody who wants to come in at this point, let us not deprive anyone.
Yes, if there is anyone who has some questions, some queries, we're open to ask.
Even if you want to compliment the two presenters, that's also a way of coming into the session and making your. So, are these your students, ma'am, or they are participants from outside as well?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am,
sure.
definitely there are students from the Department of English, right? There are postgraduate students also and students from BA also.
Okay, wonderful. And of course, participants from outside of Cambodia too.
Ma'am, I don't see many participants outside Cambodia.
All right, but as long as the department students are here, that's wonderful. Yeah. Okay, I guess then if all's done, the principal madam is also here, so maybe we can just thank the department and the college once again for having both of us over.
Thank you so much, Dr. Madam Ramika Singhvi and Madam Dr. Atika Kelsey, for accepting our invitation and sparing your valuable time and making this a very interesting session.
Thank you. We tried. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Charu. Thank you, Dr. Preeti. Thank you. Hope to meet you all.
Thank you for
Accepting our invite.
Right. And thanks, Priyanka. She's a research scholar with us. So Priyanka, everybody should know, is a research scholar with us. She's our own student. She also went to Kanoria. So she's the bridge between the two institutions. Thank you, Priyanka. You're doing a good job. Okay.
Pleasure to have you with us, ma'am.
Right. All right. Bye-bye. Take care. All the best for the rest of the conference. Bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Sit. Photo.